It is insane that nobody is talking about this right now because it just makes so much sense. Because in this video, I will be explaining to you guys why Broly's DNA is inside Cell Max. But before I begin, let me know in the comments section below if you believe this to be true. If so, why? And if not, give me your detailed explanation as to why you don't think this is true. Because in this video, I will give you guys all the information I have as to why this is a certainty. What really sent me down this rabbit hole is the last video I made where I had to go over Toriyama's thoughts not only on Beast Gohan, Orange Piccolo, but also Cell Max. Remember, when the movie came out, he actually had statements on all three of the characters, their new designs, their new powers, and how strong they actually are. And what Akira Toriyama says about this character really gives us all the information that we need to make a definitive conclusion as to if Broly was used to create this monster. Now, before you think this is all I'm relying on, just wait, because I have a bunch of evidence not only from the manga but also from the superhero movie that kind of gives us the implication that Cell Max has the DNA of Broly. So Toriyama says Cell was a fearsomely powerful foe created by Dr. Gero through the manipulation of cells. This time around, Gero's grandson Hedo used his genius to create Cell Max, a bigger, stronger version based on the original Cell blueprints. However, Hedo only created Cell Max because it was what Magenta wanted, so he isn't very fond of Cell Max himself. If Cell Max had been completed according to plan, he would have been a superhuman who even Broly couldn't defeat. But since he was forcibly activated, he became an uncontrollable monster. He's a garishly colored giant who just rampages around screaming, so I feel kinda bad for the voice actor. And he's such a veteran voice actor too. I'm so sorry. Classic Akira Toriyama. So before you start clicking on the keyboard saying like this doesn't mean that, you know, Broly's inside Cell Max, before we go into the realm of the lore and the manga and the movie, I'm just going to take what Toriyama said bluntly. He is talking about Cell Max completed, and once he's completed, this is a creature that even Broly could not defeat. And I find it interesting that he is using Broly as the measure for how powerful Cell Max is. Now, it is true that Broly is the last big bad, quote-unquote big bad, of the movie series, so maybe that's the last one he kind of remembers, and therefore he's basically throwing him in here saying like Cell Max is just that powerful, or he would have been that powerful when he is completed. But now with just everything that Akira Toriyama is saying, to me it makes it feel like Cell Max is basically modeled after Broly. And I'm not just talking about the fact that he's rampaging and screaming almost the entire time that he's on screen, because that's something that happens because he's not fully completed, and therefore he has nobody controlling him, so he has no mind, and therefore he's just destroying everything. But I do think that it is very interesting the size of Cell Max and the color. Now, the color is not as important because the color could have been just any color, and he's kind of green just like Cell, but the tone of green looks very much just like what legendary Super Saiyan Broly has. It's almost identical type of like limeish yellow green, but that's just something that he looks very similar to. But his size, that's really what struck me about Cell Max, that he is huge. He is bigger, or as big as an Uzaru. He's just ginormous. And there's a lot of art depicting when he is completed that he would look basically like Cell, far smaller and around normal size, maybe the same size as Perfect Cell was. But I believe when he is completed, when he was meant to be completed, he was never going to shrink to a smaller size. I think there is a reason why he is so big, and the reason is because they use the cells from Broly to make Cell Max, and because Broly has so much raw power. And remember, when Broly goes berserk, he gets bigger. This is the size that could hold that type of power. That's why Cell Max is so large. And when he was completed, he would have just been just as large. Maybe it looked a little bit different, but basically just as large. Even his incubation chamber is ginormous. So there is no indication whether he was going to be smaller or not if he was completed. And I'm literally just getting all of this from his size, the color, and the fact that Toriyama measured Broly's power to him. That's basically it. But when you look at the manga, it does make a lot of sense why Cell Max would have Broly's DNA. In both the Dragon Ball Super manga and the superhero movie, Dr. Hedo has this guy. This is called Hachimaru. He is essentially this guy right here. You guys remember this guy. This is the guy that measured the power of all the Z Fighters, took their DNA, and created Cell and the androids. That's this guy right here. And Dr. Hedo makes these guys at a whim. Even the newest one, Hachimaru, this guy is just the newest model for him to create. And these guys are extremely powerful, but their design and their resemblance to the remote tracking device from DBZ, I mean, come on, they look identical. So this shows that Dr. Hedo has the capability of essentially doing the exact same thing that Dr. Gero does, which is steal other people's DNA to create creatures, make androids out of a whim, basically do evil genius scientist stuff. But one thing we get in the Dragon Ball Super manga that we did not get in the superhero movie is that Dr. Gero left the blueprints to Cell to Dr. Hedo. This is covered in the superhero arc of the manga, of the prequel. This is all the information for Cell. This is the reason, one of the main reasons that Magenta wants Dr. Hedo on the project, because not only is he a genius, but he's got all the information for Cell. And this information is something that was an inheritance along with money left from Dr. Gero after he passed away, and his wife, Android 21, I guess. And this is all left to Dr. Hedo. Now there is this panel right here, the climax of the prequel arc, where Dr. Hedo gets arrested, and he basically says that he didn't really care about the disc, he didn't care about Dr. Gero's work because he doesn't care about genetically modified monsters. He was just using it as a placeholder for a very important autograph. And this actually kind of trends with Dr. Hedo. He doesn't really care about this kind of stuff. He wants to create superheroes. He wants to create androids. He wants to create, I don't know, Frankenstein monsters like the prequel series said. So this is all stuff that really tracks with Dr. Hedo and the way that he thinks. So just that alone, you could say, oh, you know, he wouldn't care about Broly. He wouldn't care about taking DNA. He wouldn't care about these things because of the fact that, you know, he just doesn't care about Dr. Gero's work. That is true. But in the same panel, guys, look at the panel, read it. In this same panel, he says that he memorized Cell's blueprints. He memorized Cell's blueprints, and he did so just so that way he can use the CD case for the autograph. That means to me that he cared enough to memorize the blueprints. And the fact that he's basically doing the exact same line of work that Gero does, he has an interest in the same line of work that Gero was interested in. So it is not that far-fetched that he could technically use one of these bug tracking devices to go around the planet to do very similar stuff to what Dr. Gero did. And since, you know, he kind of already committed time to memorizing the blueprints, it makes sense that at some point in time he was interested in Dr. Gero's work. Therefore, it is possible years ago when, say, Frieza lands in the North Pole with Broly and we get DBS Broly, as his little machine is running around the planet taking DNA, fighting moves, maybe to create the ultimate superhero, whatever the case is, he comes across someone like Broly and decides to take the DNA from him or just studied him. He could have done the exact same thing at that point in time with Goku and Vegeta, who are also in the North Pole. And this is honestly the biggest smoking gun right here, because we see this in the Red Ribbon Army base, where the Red Ribbon has all the information on both Goku and Vegeta. It is possible they had it from the past, but this looks like recent information that they had. So maybe he took the information and brought it with him, along with the blueprints for Cell Max, as well as the DNA from Broly and the blueprints from Cell Max, taking all that information back to the Red Ribbon Army to create the ultimate android, which is Cell Max. And my final point, and what makes me believe this even more, is when Magenta is telling Dr. Hedo how evil Bulma and the Capsule Corporation is. So he's explaining it to Dr. Hedo, letting him imagine it, letting him think about how evil they are. And in the movie, which is something we don't get in the manga, in the movie, Dr. Hedo gets to think about the evil corporation, and you see here Bulma, Android 17 and 18 as he would know them, but the most recent ones here on the bottom that are facing off against Cell are Tien, Yamcha, Puar, and Roshi, which they're all wearing super clothing, like recent clothing, meaning that at some point in time recently, not in Z, he's seen them before, because that's his imagination basically thinking about this. So to me, I do think that in conclusion, Dr. Hedo was very active on taking all the information and doing the same stuff that Jiro did with the remote tracking device. That's why he's got so many of them, and went around, took DNA, took fighting moves, and just kind of did that same work, ultimately leading himself to come across Broly and everything that happened in DBS Broly, taking that information and bringing it back, making Cell Max. And if you really look at Cell Max, I mean, this line from Vegeta really sums up Cell Max. When Cell Max is fighting everybody, he's acting completely on instinct, and every time he is on the back foot, he comes up with something to get him out of it. So when he is confronted by all the Z fighters, he shoots all these beams out, and this is all instant because he's not thinking, he doesn't have a mind. So this is all just on him developing his abilities, and he's learning, his body's learning as he fights. Shoots these beams everywhere to get rid of everybody else. Gamma 1 is coming down, trying to kill him, hitting him in the dome, and he instantly puts his arm up to break his arm and have that be a sacrifice so he doesn't die. The entire fight between him and Piccolo, you can see that he's learning as he's fighting, and then at the very end, when he realizes that Piccolo is holding him still so Gohan can special beam cannon him, his wings activate because he is in self-preservation mode, and he is learning he needs to get out of there because flying normally is not cutting it. He needs an extra boost to get out of the situation so he can live. So Cell Max really does have a lot of the traits that Broly has. If you just look hard enough, you guys can see it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. I just thought this was a really fun theory, and let me know if you think the theory is correct or if it's incorrect, and tell me why. This is going to be Blackscape signing off. Take care, guys.
Subscribe for more content. Or perish.